Hey, Misfit Entrepreneurs, this is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to watching us on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below. Give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Brian Biro. Where to start with Brian? He is ranked as one of the top motivational speakers in the world, top 10 interactive speakers in the United States. He's delivered over 1,900 speeches and presentations around the world over the last 34 years, and he's a best-selling author of 16 books. If that's not enough, he's been featured everywhere from Good Morning America to CNN, and he's a professional or former professional swimming coach building teams ranked in the top 10 in the nation. His latest book is called Lessons from Legends, which brings forth the championship formulas for success from arguably two of the greatest coaches in history, Wooden and Summitt. The book provides a fresh perspective on leadership, team building, and excellence, and how to take the lessons from the locker room to the boardroom. I'm excited to dig into all of this with Brian and share his just wisdom from a 35-year plus entrepreneur career. So, Brian, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
My inner misfit is fired up and energized, ready to go, Dave.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. And as we do with each guest in every episode, is we have to start with your story. So take 5 minutes or so. You've had just one heck of a career that has spanned the globe. So take 5 minutes or so and just tell us, how'd you get to where you're at?
Well, Dave, I first of all, it all kind of stems around the same common ground, which is people. I have a belief in people. I believe we can grow. We can learn if we're humble and we're hungry to learn. I've had 3 really neat careers. As you mentioned, first career was a U.S. swimming coach. And so I was working with young athletes to try to rise to their potential. But you don't really coach swimming. You don't really coach basketball. You coach people. The technical stuff is the easy stuff. It's the emotional, the mental, the confidence that you build. So I loved that. And I had a great, great run of it. But I had no life. I only knew myself as a coach. And so I'm probably the only guy, Dave, who went to graduate school to get a life instead of a job. And I actually did. I got my MBA at UCLA, ended up going into my corporate career, and I had a nice run there. I was in the transportation industry at first, pretty large company, ended up becoming a vice president. And I found that a lot of the elements that I focus on today as a speaker about team building became really a passion for me at that time, because we were kind of typical, and operations hated sales, sales hated operations. They both hated the home office just a little bit more. And that just did not work for me. So I started doing team building programs in my own company, and we had an incredible turnaround, not only in terms of the results, the profitability, the revenue growth, the plaudits from our industry for customer service. It was the way we function inside, people really supporting each other. So at the very peak of this massive turnaround where these seminars have really created a lot of momentum, I said to my wife, honey, we're doing great. Let's quit. It's time for me to go out there and do this thing I love, which is speaking. And so for the last 34 years, that's been what I'm doing. And it's kind of funny. Most speakers speak because they want to get love back. And we all want that. We all want to be appreciated. We all want the applause. But I really speak because I feel I'm doing what I was put on earth to do when I'm up there on stage. I joke, when I'm on stage, I'm 25. I get off, I'm 69 again, but on stage, 25. So I guess that's most of the story. But the most important part of the story you can find in every signature line of every email I send, because it always says Brian Biro, husband, father, grandfather, speaker, author. So those priorities are always at the top of my list.
No, that's awesome. There's a lot that I have for you, and I hope we can get to all of it today in our time. One of the things that I thought about as coming into this interview is that, you've spoken, almost 2,000 times around the world over the last 3+ decades. And, I'm just really curious, what is it that you have learned about people and really how to help them reach their potential? What have you found?
Well, I love that question. I've never been asked that question. Great question, Dave. I think the starting place is that a lot of people come up and say, you changed my life, or you're a motivational speaker. And I always tell them, first of all, thank you, but no one will change your life except you. All right. And number two, because motivation has to be inside. I say I'm a motivated speaker, but not necessarily a motivational speaker. I think what I've learned most of all is the power of simplicity. That's one of the most important things that I've learned in these 34 years. When I first started speaking, I tried to tell everybody everything I had ever learned. And they'd get this look on their face like, wow, that's really neat. And then walk out and not remember anything. Instead, I've learned that over time that more is not necessarily better. If I can help people grab a hold of one or two or three ideas or principles that they bring into their life, that's when you can create really dynamic change. So I think that's one of the key things. The second thing I've learned has really been more of a reinforcement of something I believed, but now I know it to be true. And that is the best thing about us as human beings is we'll do more for somebody else than we'll do for ourselves. And that's why it's so vital in any organization. I don't care if you're a one-person entrepreneur, you're actually still part of a team because your clients or potential clients are part of your team. When you come from that place of every time I have a chance, I'm going to serve you the best way I can. The only kind of real leadership is servant leadership. I call it breakthrough leadership. But I really recognize that that's when we really reach our peak, is when we recognize that we're our best, when we're doing it for more than just ourselves. So those are a couple of the things that jump out at me right away. I guess one other thing, and I'm sure we'll get into it more, is the power of being fully present is the only way we can really build trust at a foundational level with people. And being present means when you're with people, 100% of your mind, body, and spirit is with that person where they are right now. And whenever we do that, we say to that person, the main thing that our job is, whether it's as a parent, whether it's as a business person, our job is to help the people that we lead, that we serve, that we care about, that we really want to build a relationship with. Our job is to help them know they're important. Because when they know they're important, they'll rise. And when they feel unimportant, they'll leave. So those are some of the biggest things.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't agree more. I think, is human beings would make things a lot more complicated than it has to be much of the time. And the fact that it's the 80-20 rule. 20% of what we do, gives us 80% of the benefits of the results and the stuff that we're looking for. Right. So it's like, finding that 20% should be the pursuit, the passion that we have, because if we just find a few of those things and do them well, it can make all the difference, right? And that's something that I've learned on this show. It's not that there's like one thing that, Misfit entrepreneurs that have been successful and keep their success do that much better than anybody else. It's usually like a few little things that they do really, really well that add up to that bigger advantage, and it's kind of figuring out what that is for each person. So I like that you kind of say that. Too, you have a unique way. You're talking about, speaking with people and bringing them in. I'm a big believer in people support what they help to create. And at the same time, you at the end just kind of said, people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. So giving them that opportunity helps, even support that, right? So you've got this unique way of delivering your talks where you really make your participants the star of the show in a way. Explain how you do that and how others can maybe do that as a leader, even if they lead a small team or they're leading a company, and how that creating that niche like that's really made a difference for you.
Well, I love the fact that when you can get people off the sidelines into the game, that's the only chance they really have a chance to win. So from the beginning, I've understood that when we hear, we forget. When we see, we're more likely to remember, but it's when we do that we understand. So in my presentations, I want to get people to actually do something that causes them to apply the principles we've learned along the way. So I'm called America's Breakthrough Speaker because I've had close to 1 million people now, I've counted them up, break through 1-inch thick boards, karate style, at the end of my events. It is the greatest, Dave, it's the greatest individual and team experience you'll ever have in an event. And what I love about it is, number one, you don't know you can do it until you do it. And that's the same thing when you start a business. That's the same thing when you take that risk. I think I can do it. I think I'm prepared. I hope I can do it. But you don't know until you step in there and go for it. And when I say it's the greatest individual and team experience, the individual part is It's a metaphor. So I have everybody write on their board something they want to break through, something they know right in their heart is holding them back, a limit, fear, obstacle, habit, or doubt. On the other side of the board, they write down what's waiting for me when I have broken through. What am I going to do, be, feel, create, have in my life? Because never again is this going to hold me back. So on the individual side, I've had people beat cancer because of what they wrote on their board. I've had people lose over 150 pounds. I've had people radically change their business fortunes and their careers, bring their families back together. There's a second part to the individual impact. And again, kind of ties into that. It starts to cross over into the team. If I had 1,000 people in an event, we would start with 100 circles of 10 people each. And in each circle, there'd be a person holding the board for the other 9. So if Dave, you stepped in your circle, 9 people around you are going, Dave, 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 and the mass hysteria, music pounding, people clapping. Some people have never been cheered for like that in their lives. And for them, that kind of support that they've never felt quite that way before, they've always kind of stepped back, is something that is a huge breakthrough for them. The team part, equally powerful. There's something about it that really kind of dives into that. We'll do more for others than for ourselves, because you will just never hear people cheer like they cheer. Sometimes I think I'm going to lose my hearing with their cheering that's going on. And the last part of the team element that makes it so unique and so lasting, the best way I can describe it is the best day of my life was my daughter's wedding day. I have a picture in front of me right now of my first dance with her. And it was the best day for something I never could have understood or explained until I experienced it. And that was for probably 6 hours that wedding night. I didn't think of myself once. All I could do was think of her. They told me I was laughing and crying at the same time. I don't remember. All I remember was her. And when those people are going, Dave, 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 and as they're cheering on, they're feeling the same way I felt for my daughter that day. They've moved from ego to we-go. All they care about is your breakthrough. And that's a powerful breakthrough when it comes to understanding what it feels to really be a team player. So what I love about it, again, I talk a lot about controlling your controllables. And I teach 3 of those: shape your future, energize and engage yourself in your team, and build people, teams, and relationships. The breakthrough experience causes you to apply those things. So what are the lessons that a leader can take to his team from that description? Number 1, ask more than tell. We've been conditioned in our lives, in our school, in our families, in our work, that you go to the leader for answers. Now, there's a time for that. There's no question that there's a time for answers. But if you want to be a real breakthrough leader in today's world, be more conscious of questions than answers, because the quality of the questions you ask your team will determine the quality of your team. The quality of the questions you ask yourself will determine the quality of your life. So when you ask instead of tell, you think about it. When you ask somebody what they think, for their input, for their ideas, immediately, how do they feel? They feel valued.
Yeah,
they feel respected. They feel like, they feel like, hey, I've got something to say that has some impact. I matter. I'm important. And also, you get yourself a great opportunity to learn stuff from a different perspective. So one of the most powerful ways to get people off the sidelines and into the game is to ask a few more questions. The other thing is, whenever you can, really be an example of energy. And that starts with 2 things. 1, movement, and the second is purpose. So those are some of the ways you can apply that same concept that I've tried to use in my programs for 34 years. I think part of it comes from having been an athletic coach, was that, you don't get better at swimming until you get in the pool. Right. And so I need to get people to really take these ideas and do something with them, so they emerge with a feeling of, I didn't know I could do that when I walked in this room. What else could I do that I didn't know I could do?
No, that's great. And it actually leads me into lessons from legends. I believe from just us kind of meeting ahead of time, talking to us, you had to experience some time with John Wooden as a coach.
I did.
Tell us what that experience was like, and then we'll get into some of the lessons from him and Pat Summitt.
Well, I don't know whether you can see it or not, but right behind me up there is a picture of Coach Wooden and I. I had a lot darker hair in those days, and Coach Wooden, for anyone who may not know, John Wooden was the greatest men's college basketball coach in history. His teams at UCLA won 10 national championships in 12 years. No other coach in men's college history has won more than 5 in a career. That was Coach K, who won 5 in 42 years of coaching, and he was a pretty great coach himself. But Coach Wooden was an even better person than he was a coach. He was a true example of character, of integrity, of kindness, of humility. I got to jump in and do a commercial about humility, because that's one of the most powerful principles that comes alive in Lessons from the Legend. A lot of people think that being humble means you can't be confident, and that is so wrong. You can be very confident and very humble, and for the simple reason that being humble doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less. And the real reason why being humble is so critical to being a great leader is only those who are humble, if you think about it, are lifelong learners. Because only those who are humble are always looking to learn something new. They always believe there's something to improve. There's a way to get better. And so when you come from a place of humility, you come from a place of a absolute desire to keep learning and growing every day. I first met Coach Wooden in my corporate career. I graduated from my MBA program at UCLA, but I had grown up loving John Wooden. I was from Southern California. I just admired the way he treated people. He was always giving credit and never trying to take it. He was always gracious in the few times he lost, which wasn't that often in the last part of his career. But the funny thing was, until he started that reign of 10 championships, he was known as a really good coach, but the coach who couldn't win the big one. Well, they got that one wrong at the end. I sat down in his living room with him when I first met him, because I was running a large training company, and I asked if I could come and interview him. I knew where he lived. It was the same area that I've been a coach. He graciously said, "Sure, come on down," and we became lifelong friends from that interview. He epitomizes the kind of person that I believe we need, the kind of character we need more than ever before. The kind of person who is going to do the right thing when nobody's looking. The kind of person who can disagree without being disagreeable. And his style was very even-keeled. It was just a flat-out honor, and one of the greatest parts of my life that I became his friend, and that we chatted fairly often.
Yeah, there's a ton of books on John, and obviously his books and everything too. That if you're a leader, you're a CEO, you're a manager, you're in any type of role where you have responsibility, it's worth it to read some of the philosophy of John Wooden. All right, so Brian, as we talk about John Wooden, and obviously Pat Summitt, as the other side of the coin with that, from a coaching standpoint, you actually may want to just tell people who Pat Summitt is real quick so they have a frame of reference.
Yes. When I wrote this book, my first book was called Beyond Success, and it was built around, it was kind of the structure for that book was about the pyramid of success. That's also behind me right there, the pyramid. And that was John Wooden's model for teaching life. The various stones of that pyramid that he felt were vital to creating what he called competitive greatness. Now, competitive greatness to John Wooden was not beating everybody. It was being the best of which you're capable. It was being your best when your best is called for. But when I wrote this new book, I wanted to also write about a woman. I wanted to write about somebody who also had a model for teaching life. And I also wanted, the more I got into it, I got really excited because John Wooden and Pat Summitt were very different in their personalities. Pat Summitt could melt our computer screens with her stare. She was tough. All right. She was no nonsense. Coach Wooden was very gentlemanly. He got his point across. But they shared that humility. They shared that work ethic. They shared that desire to always get better. They shared that powerful choice to take personal responsibility, to never blame others, but to step up to the table. Pat Summitt was in many ways to women's basketball what John Wooden has been to men's basketball. I may get a few comments from that from Gino Auriemma up in UConn, but Pat Summitt went to 16 Final Fours, won 8 national championships. But like Coach Wooden, she didn't win any in her first 8 trips. So she made it to the Final Four, but never won it until the ninth, and then she won 8 more after that. She passed away much too
While we're on
young.
that for both of them, real quick, what I mean, you may not know this, or maybe you surmise what it was. What was the switch that flipped for them that changed? What turned them from, I guess, good to great because they both have a similar, course of where they're good and they get there, but they can't close the deal. And then all of a sudden it flips, right? And they're just the best of the best. What was that?
Well, I think that in both cases, it comes back to that humility piece in that they always sought to learn something from the previous year. They would each go back when the season was over and really focus in and say, how did this year go? What happened at the end? Why did we lose? In Coach Wooden's case, he felt that, and he took meticulous notes on every practice and every game, and then he'd actually pay attention to them. And in his case, he said after 1963, he said he felt like his team got more worn out as the year went on, that his practices needed to actually ease up as they went towards the playoffs. And that was the big change. Some people will say, well, he had better players. And you know what? Coach Wooden went with every conceivable kind of basketball team. His first 2 national championship teams had no starter over 6'4.5". Then he had Walton and Kareem. And then he had forward dominant teams with Sidney Wicks and Curtis Rowe. And then Dave Myers in his last one. So those simple principles that he looked at each year at how to get better, that was the big one in his mind. And he used that formula from there on out, and it seemed to work very well.
Well, but that's a great lesson too. That's a great lesson too, that like sometimes to move the needle, like it doesn't take a huge thing. It's just paying attention to the surroundings and the things around you, and just being able to maybe step out and take that 5,000 foot view and because when you're in it day to day as entrepreneurs, this, when you're in it day to day and you're cranking and doing all the things you need to do to keep a business going, you miss a lot of that stuff. And you could say like seeing the forest through the trees and that sort of thing. But if you actually plan time as an entrepreneur and take that out to just look at it from a bigger picture and just ask the questions like, what's one area that if we did a little better could make a huge difference in the business? How could I do it? Like that type of mental work as a leader is, I mean, it can be just, it's one big idea, one little area even that if you get it right can make a huge difference. So that's a great lesson.
Absolutely. It is a great lesson. And it's the same one that both of them use, because Pat Summitt also made slight adjustments, not huge adjustments. I mean, she got to the Final Four, but some adjustments at the championships. And actually the focus on her, what she called definite dozen. It was the equivalent in many ways to Coach Wooden's pyramid of success. Those slight adjustments, and when they worked, she knew they worked. When you don't do that, when you don't take that time to pay attention, guess what? You're going to look, you're going to see your picture in the dictionary under the word insanity, because you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I actually even tell a story in the book to really bring out this point about one of the people who has certainly been one of the most successful entrepreneurs that you and I have ever heard of, named Warren Buffett. And a vital part of Warren Buffett's day is doing exactly what you just did, stepping back, asking, is it working, studying, learning, paying attention to what he's been doing, what's been going on. And that is sacred time to him. And
he spends more time reading and thinking than anything else.
Yes, indeed. And Pat Summitt and John Wooden were great examples of paying attention to what they were doing, adjusting and changing. A great one for Pat Summitt was when UConn came along. They came along with a new kind of offense. Well, and they won the national championship when Tennessee was favored. Well, she went to the people who designed that, and that was Tex Winter at Chicago. It was the Chicago Bulls offense, all right, and Coach Jackson. And she sat down with them and asked them a trillion questions, not only about how to run the offense, but more important, how do you defend your own offense? Came back with the same teams the next year, and Tennessee won the national championship, almost exactly the same lineups. They had very few seniors graduating. So there's a great cue. If it's not working, try something different. Don't keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
It's a great point. Any other, while we're on the book, any other lessons from either of them that you highlight in the book that you feel are important to share?
I think one of the most important ones was that they were blame busters. There's a difference between demanding and focusing on each person taking personal responsibility and blaming other people. When you blame people, it never serves you. When you come to somebody and say, this is what you did, this is how it worked, let's figure out how to do it better, then you become a blame buster. And the reason why blame is so detrimental in any organization, in any family, in any relationship is a very simple reason. If you think about blame in the context of time, is blame about the past, the present, or the future?
It's usually
always about the past. Yeah. So whenever you find yourself in blame, where are you? You're in the past, where you have no opportunity to make an adjustment. So both of them really epitomized, here's what we did, let's learn from it, let's grow, rather than you did this terrible thing. They always believed that when you discipline was about teaching, not about punishing. You taught, you disciplined, it's done, you're fresh start. Let's get after it again today. And because of that, they created a tremendous amount of respect. Their players knew they cared about them. They knew that they would never be beaten up. They were not afraid to take risks on the floor. When you have blame in your organization, then what you're doing is you're playing that old fair game called whack-a-mole. All right, because people are afraid to stick their heads up. They're going to get whacked if they make a mistake. And you don't want that in an organization, because then people are overthinking. They're afraid to take some good risks. When you get rid of blame, you create momentum. And so both of them were true blame busters.
Well, and another thing about blame too that I think is probably important for people to think through is that, yeah, it's centered on the past, but it also, you're ceding control to whatever that is that you're blaming for it. So you're not, you no longer are in control at that point. You're being run by whatever that is, and that's in control. And so you're giving up part of the power that you have to really make a difference for the future by, ceding it to whatever that is that you're using to blame against from the past, right?
That is really a good point. It brings up the metaphor of the board again that we talked about. 95% of breaking the board is focusing beyond the board. It's about your vision. Right? Yeah. And I've had giant muscular guys hit the board so hard that parts of me were jiggling inside that I didn't know I had, but it didn't break because they focused on the board. When we focus on the obstacle, we get the obstacle. What you focus on is what you create. So get off. You got to see the obstacle. Don't pretend it's not there. This is what we did. Change that vision to how we're going to solve this. How are we going to get better? All right. And man, you'll create momentum inside yourself and your organization that's unstoppable.
Yeah, that's a great follow on and a good point. Actually, it leads me back to something you mentioned earlier. You talked about ego and we-go and that sort of thing. So talk a little bit more about ego. Like, where is there a place for it as a leader, and where do leaders maybe need to be aware of its pitfalls?
Well, I think there's a difference between ego and when I say ego, I don't want to say you can't be confident. Confidence is vitally important. You got to believe in what you do. But to me, the ego part comes in where you give credit and take responsibility more often. You're constantly looking around to lift people because you don't need that. You don't need to pat yourself on the back. All right. So the ego comes in when it's all about you all the time. When you want to give credit and take responsibility, then you're a winner. Then you've made it to the point of confidence rather than ego. I think that one of the great things that we need to do is to really look to give appreciation, recognition, acknowledgement to the people who do the little things. Thank people for their effort, their energy, and their attitude more than just their results. Because we don't control the results. We control what we put in to get to the results. And when you really start to focus on that, you get out of the ego. You're looking for the little things that people do that may not show up on the result pad, But when you really focus on those things, everybody feels important, everybody moves ahead. And when it comes from a genuine place of, I really know that we can't function without everybody doing their part, you'll move from ego to ego. Coach Wooden used the model of, he used the metaphor of a basketball team and an organization is like a car. Well, if you have a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or a Bill Walton, that's a big engine. But you know what? That engine will be useless without tires.
Right.
All right. And your tires may be the other people, the other four players. But guess what? Those tires will fall off if you don't have lug nuts. And lug nuts are maybe the 13th and 14th player, the last two people on the team who never get in a game, but they push the stars in practice. Every one of them is important. And so when you come from a place of we go, you're aware that everyone matters, everyone's important, and that you look for what it is that can help each person rise to their potential.
Yeah, I that makes obviously a ton of sense too, and it's a great way to kind of look at the analogy of the car is great as well. I had something that, well, I'll come back to it, but I want to talk a little bit about your entrepreneur career and your entrepreneur journey itself. And so, like, one of the first thoughts I have anytime I have somebody that has been able to be as successful consistently as long as you have, I have to ask the question: what do you attribute to such a long and consistent career in speaking, writing, and doing what you do?
That's really fun to think about. I think, because I've been doing it a long time, and my industry, like every industry, has radically changed over those 34 years. Mm-hmm. So I think there's two main elements that I believe have kept me vibrant within my industry and within my career, and loving that I chose to be an entrepreneur, chose to start my own business, chose to jump out and go on my own. The first is that I love what I do, and I consistently say so. We cannot underestimate the power of our self-talk. Many people spend their whole life saying, I have to do this. Now, we learned I have to do this when we were little kids. And it was important when we were little kids, where our parents said, you have to do this or you're gonna get a spanking, or you have to do this or you might get hurt. But the two words that went with and go with I have to are or else something bad's going to happen. I really have chosen to live my life by letting go of have to, because when I get down to it, if I think about it, what do I have to do in life? There's only one thing. I have to die. Everything else is a matter of choice. Now, right. Everything has consequences, but they're all choices. So I choose to live my life and run my business. And as an entrepreneur, I think this is really important, from a place that says I want to, choose to, like to, love to, can't wait to. Yeah, and that gets my first step to be vibrant every day. So that's one. I probably have said 5,000 times, I love what I do. And I'm doing what I feel I was put on earth to do. That's number one. Number two is kind of going back to something we were talking about, is adaptability, changing, asking myself what's working, what's not working. When I first started speaking, Dave, the average presentation was at least a full day, sometimes 2 and 3 days. Now, pretty much every event I do is an hour. And I want to give as much value as I can, but I've had to learn how to adapt to give value that I feel good about in what used to be 8 hours in 1 hour. All right. So, and that keeps it fresh. All right. The last thing is ask a lot of questions and you'll learn a lot. So part of my process with every event I speak, when I talk to the client, they say, well, what are you going to do for us? I say, well, let me ask you some questions first. Mm-hmm. And I want to learn about them, which makes every event fresh, unique, customized, and individual. And that keeps the freshness to it. So I think those are the key things for me that have really been foundational steps along the way. If you would have told me 25 years ago that I would be doing what I did then in 1 hour, I would have said it was impossible. Right? That's how much has changed. But I'm loving it. I'm feeling like it's made I can still provide value. And I've also learned that it ties into that simplicity idea. Mm-hmm. By giving them a few powerful things in 1 hour. in many ways, they'll come out with more value in their life than those 8 hours of too much that was like drinking from a fire hose.
Well, and I also think that it's necessary in today's age too. I often, joke that we've been conditioned now to kind of have the attention span of a gnat. We can't even wait, the last 3 seconds on the microwave anymore. We have to open it before it's even done at 3 seconds left, right? And so we've kind of like been conditioned to take things in smaller chunks, right? And I think if you can deliver a great concept to somebody with a true actionable path in less than an hour, you're actually hitting the mark really, really well. Because going beyond that is, I think, hard for people to, as a whole, to consume, anymore. So, that's I think important overall for people to understand just kind of the way things have gone and continue to go. You said something earlier. I wanted to come back to it because I kind of formulated my thoughts on it. You were talking about what you learned, as well as like you also found from studying Wooden and these different coaches and just in general. And it's something that I've taken to heart as a dad. And you mentioned praising the effort. And I think this is a really, really big distinction versus praising the effort versus the result. Because in the end, the effort is the behavior that you want to build, which leads to the result. And I think it's just a point I really wanted to make because you said it, and I wanted to come back to it because if you're a leader, praising the result's fine, but you should praise the effort that got to the result and reinforce that, because that will build that effort and build that behavior and grow it within your organization. Would you agree with that?
I am so glad you emphasize that point, because it is one of the biggest mistakes that we make. And it's because we've been so conditioned to only give praise, only give the pat on the back, only really let people shine when they've when the result is done, when the job's been completed. And again, we don't control results. We control our effort, our attitude, our thinking, we control our effort. And a great way to look at this: in 27 years at UCLA, John Wooden never said the words winning or losing to his players. He never said the words.
Wow.
Now, did he want to win? Absolutely. But what he wanted was them to focus on his definition of success, which is essentially, he said, success is peace of mind that comes from knowing you've given the best of which you're capable. In other words, you can't tell by the scoreboard. You got to tell by what you put in, because you're the only one who can know that. When you start appreciating, recognizing people for the things they control, their effort, their energy, and their attitude, here's the cool part: they'll produce more results. Because now they're focusing on the things that produce those results.
Right.
So that is a huge piece. I give people a fun way. Entrepreneurs, is a very fun and simple way to remember the important ways to give people recognition, acknowledgement, and appreciation. And it's simply remember the television network ESPN. The E says thank people with and for effort and energy. The with is sometimes we thank people and we go, hey, thanks a lot, appreciate it. We're not even there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But when we stop for a second and really are present with that person, when we put a smile on our face, we really show through our gestures that we appreciate them, it sticks. The other point we just made, even more important: thank people for their effort and energy. So that's the E. The S, acknowledge and appreciate people from time to time through the power of surprise. Surprise is the super glue of impact. When you stop a meeting and acknowledge somebody for their effort and energy, you write them a handwritten card these days. They'll either think, oh my gosh, the computer's down, or wow, this is pretty important. It's surprise. Surprise stays with people. It helps them. It really connects them to something, and it makes them recognize that when you realize what you focus on is what you create. When you write that handwritten card and you tell them what they did, they want to do more of it. The P is the most important of all in ESPN. That's be fully present. Express to those people beyond words that they matter, that they count, that they're important. And the N is do it now. So often we get caught on the road called as soon as. Well, as soon as I get this report done, as soon as I got these other things, as soon as is a direct road to never. I believe we're on this road every day that has a Y in the road. One says as soon as, the other says now. As soon as it looks easier, it's well lit, there's no ice, there's no ruts. Now it's twisty and turny and curvy. But if you get on the road called as soon as, it'll only take you to perpetual procrastination. So if there's people you should be acknowledging for their effort and energy, do it now, because you may never pass that way again.
No, that's a great point as well too. My last question for you before we get to Misfit 3 is any lessons that you found in your own coaching career that have been very useful to you as an entrepreneur, maybe that we haven't covered yet?
Yeah, they're kind of a fun one, and that is it's what I call the principle of exaggeration, right? And anybody can do this in any area they want to excel in. An example, when I was a swimming coach, I had a lot of athletes who had a high elbow in swimming. Now that's good. This part above water is called the recovery. It's meant to recover your muscles, to rest them until you catch the water in front of you and have the resistance phase again. But I had some swimmers who got in the habit of pulling with an arm pull way outside of their body line, their center line of their body. That's not good in swimming because you have very little leverage and power out here. But Dave, if I said to a swimmer who I can clearly see is swim with their arms way out here, pull down the center line of your body, guess what they always answered back to me?
I don't know.
They never said, I can't. They always said, I am.
Oh.
Because it felt normal.
It felt like they were.
They were out here, but they thought it was right because they wanted to do it right. So did it do me any good to say to that swimmer who's swimming like this to pull down the center line of your body? No, it did me harm. Because they looked at me like, Coach, are you crazy? You need glasses. I am. So how did I help them, or how did I help me? I used the principle of exaggeration. And I say with that swimmer whose arm's way out here, when your right hand hits the water, pull it way across your body over here to the left. And with your left arm, go way across your body to the right. As soon as I say to a swimmer who's swimming out here to pull way over there, exaggerate it, guess where they pull? Right down the middle.
Yeah.
And how does it feel? It feels weird. And that's what you got to feel to grow. Because if it feels too normal, you're going back to the old way. So the principle of exaggeration you can use to be a better presenter. When you're practicing on your own, get a little crazy. Move your arms wider. Change your expression. Go way beyond the limits of your normal comfort zone, because comfort zones become confinement zones. And as you stretch those limits, all right, what happens is you expand yourself a little bit so that it feels better to go a little bit farther. So when you're working with people, get them to go a little further than they need to. As a former marathon runner, a trail marathon runner, I would always say, run uphill first. Do the hard stuff first. And then at the end, when your body's more tired and you're running downhill, it feels good. So the principle of exaggeration is a really cool principle to apply within an organization, as a parent working with your kids to try to improve an area, and especially in yourself when you feel like you're kind of stuck and you're not moving forward anymore.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard it called that before, which is a great way to kind of describe it, and it can really relate being, a highly competitive and Ironman and all of that, talking about swimming, biking, running, all that stuff, and being able to push yourself. In fact, one of the things that I've been working on the most in the off season this past year is my swim and my stroke and everything. So it's interesting to see you, kind of share that, because, I've been working on my high elbow and all that stuff and making sure that I'm trying to get things in line and do everything. So it's kind of funny to hear that. And actually,
it's kind of a great metaphor about that, Dave. Yeah. I got real quick for you. Yeah. I believe, underwater is called resistance. You know that because you're resisting the water. You're pulling weight. I call resistance the action phase of our life. It's the doing, going, making it happen. Mm-hmm. The recovery phase above water is recovery. Most of us spend so much focus on the resistance phase that we undervalue the power, the importance of the recovery. And you can have the strongest resistance phase in the world, but if you don't recover, you're gonna fade. So and that's the same in life. And I call the recovery phase of life the time we take to be present with ourselves, whether it's meditating, walking, running, resting, listening to music, listen to a great podcast. That's the recovery phase, and it gets you stronger for the let's go make it happen.
Okay, it's time for Brian's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take that you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you were going to leave this earth tomorrow and you could only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom for the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Brian, what are your Misfit 3?
My Misfit 3, number 1, really make a conscious effort to be more fully present to the people in your life. When you're fully present, as I said, 100% of your mind, body, and spirit is with that person you're with right now. I call it the greatest gift. That's why we call it the present. My 2 daughters, when they were 8 and 3, one night when I should have been and could have been tucking them in, and I was falling into the habit of rushing to my office and getting on the phone, they put a knife through my heart when they asked this question. They said, Dad, before we go to sleep, can you tell us, do you love your phone more than you love us? Emerson said, what you do screams so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying. And I was living my life as if my phone was more important than my daughters. Being present says to every person when you're with them that they matter, that they count. Number 1, that's the most important thing you can ever do. Number 2, know that your energy is your choice. Most people think about their energy in many ways the way we think about the weather. It's like, hope the weather's good for my workout today. Hope for my run. Hope the weather's great for our family spring break. But don't we think about our energy that way? Hope I have enough energy to make it through this crazy week. But your energy is a choice. And it's a choice that's based upon 2 foundational keys. Number 1, if you want to elevate your energy, if you want to move your life, you got to move yourself. You got to add movement to your life. We don't get older, we just stop moving. All right. And so if you want to change your level of energy, start by just adding a little bit more movement in your life. Never sit at your cell phone or on a computer for more than 15 to 30 minutes without moving differently. Even if it's just rubbing your hands together, changing your facial expression. When you're doing Zoom calls, stop turning off the video. And it's not just so you want to see them, but you want to see you. What kind of energy are you bringing to that team in that Zoom session? So change the way you move and you'll change your life. The second key to energy is purpose. In fact, it's the most important. When you are full of purpose, you're full of energy. At every event I speak, the last thing I do before I speak is I bring a photo of my family. They're my purpose. And I spend about a minute just totally immersed in my purpose. I think about how much I love them, how much I want to do for them, how much I want to be for them, the example I want to be. And it instantly changes me. See, it doesn't matter if my knees ache at that point. All that matters, if I don't give the best to the people who are in front of me right now, I'm not giving my family my best. So when you focus on adding movement and every day, ask yourself when you wake up in the morning, what am I truly grateful about in my life today? What you're grateful about will focus you on your priorities. Your priorities will lead you to your purpose. So number 1, be fully present. Number 2, your energy is your choice. All right. And last thing about energy, let go, release any energy vampires. We have people in our life who go, I have all this energy, except when I get around him. We have this one person who seems to suck the energy out of me. Well, here's the truth. It's not their energy. No one can take your energy away from you unless you allow them to. And you don't do it out of anger. You do it out of joy and recognition that when I release you, I'm suddenly realizing that not releasing you is drinking poison and expecting you to die. It doesn't work that way. All right. The third key that I really want to do is probably the most important words I've ever written. And it's just a sentence. It says, the love we fail to share is the only pain we live with. The love we fail to share is the only pain we live with. I learned this the hard way. In one of my other books called It's Time for Joy, the first chapter is about a story that I never tell. In fact, I don't know why I'm telling it today. I only wrote it in this book, but it's a story about a person in my life who was such a great gift to me, a friend to me. And I didn't tell her how much she meant. I didn't tell her what a difference she made in my life. I didn't share the love that I had to give until it was too late. So the love you fail to share is the only pain you live with. If you wait too long, like I did, the love you fail to share is the only pain you'll leave with. So if you have people in your life that you could to tell them how much they mean to you, how much you appreciate them, do it now. If there's people in your life you haven't been present for, you can change it now. Um, if there's people in your life that you really need to recognize for their effort, their energy, and their attitude, you can do it now. And as you do so, here's the beauty of it. Whenever you seek to enrich another person's experience, you can't help but enrich your own. The greatest thing about doing that is it fills you up at the same time it fills them up. So those are my three. Be present, know your energy is a choice, and don't wait. Choose the now.
Brian, it's an excellent Misfit 3. All of them are so good and timeless, can be used in all parts of our lives. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
My website is the place to find me about speaking. It's got my books on it. It's www.brianbiro.com. It's BrianBiro. I always respond to any messages, emails that people send to me. It's got a connection to that. I'd love to hear from you, Dave. This was one of the most fun interviews. I've done hundreds that I've ever had. I really enjoyed it. I didn't know about your triathlon work. That is so cool.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you. And, it's been an honor to have you on, and we'll link to all this in the show notes so that people can find it, the best show notes in the business for reasons I will talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneur, it's your first episode with us, welcome. It's an honor to have you with us. And I hope you become a regular listener or watcher of the show and a subscriber. And for all of you that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure and go and check those show notes for this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself as part of my personal growth routine. Each week I go back through these episodes with great guests like Brian, and I take my best pieces of wisdom and insight and, different tips and tricks from that. And I share those with you. So go out and check those out. And then also give this episode a rating and review, like and comment on it. Help share Brian's message, because we all know, and I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Brian shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Brian, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
It was absolute joy. The best to you, my friend.